We're going to get some perspective from both sides of the aisle. Here with us now is Republican strategist and senior fellow at the Frontiers of Freedom, Scottie Nell Hughes, and Democratic strategist and 2024 presidential delegate for Vice President Kamala Harris, Khyvan Shove. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning.
All right, so Scottie, as we just heard from Hannah's reporting there, Trump appearing to give Israel the green light, or at least not blocking Netanyahu from trying to take over the Gaza Strip there in Gaza City anyway. There have been calls for Trump to rein in Netanyahu as U.S. support for Israel's actions in Gaza falls. Is there daylight between Trump and Netanyahu or not?
Anna, I certainly hope so, but I think we're at the point right now where we have to ask, is Netanyahu's primary goal to get the hostages back or to bring long-term peace to the region? If you were going to go with this continued thought of invasion into Gaza, I think it's going to be very sad for the hostages. I think that's only going to make it even more complicated to get those hostages back in a more timely manner. If Netanyahu continues to be this ambitious and want to go into Gaza, not only is he probably going to do it alone without a lot of the allies he has relied upon in the past, but he might also cause even more escalation in the area, more region. And unfortunately right now, the PR war is not being won by the Israeli government right now. Those pictures coming out of Gaza are very concerning, and they're continuing to not only flood the internet, but obviously get to some very important eyes, including President Trump's and other leaders around the world.
Yeah, and in a rare move by a Republican, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia calling what's going on in Gaza a genocide against the Palestinian people, and that's from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Khyvan, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is working with the Qatari Prime Minister trying to come up with a plan to end the war in Gaza. Yet Witkoff recently said Hamas shows a lack of desire to even reach a ceasefire. What's new here? Khyvan, talk about how realistic a deal is between Israel and Hamas. What does Trump need to do, or his team need to do, to try to get both sides to come and get a deal at this point?
Well, it seems pretty clear that Netanyahu doesn't want a deal, and that's been clear for over a year now. What's really interesting, I think, for both the left and Trump administration is that it seems like voters on the left that made this a huge issue for Kamala Harris's campaign are fine with folks like Bernie Sanders not calling this a genocide, when we just talked about, right, that even Marjorie Taylor Greene is coming out very strongly against this. And I think you're seeing Donald Trump lose not only, the international scholars who probably weren't supporting him in the first place, but folks like Joe Rogan and really that podcast manosphere have really dived deep on this issue. And so it actually could move the needle to hear more of those voices speak up, those folks that are not weighing in necessarily on every political issue, but have really zoned in on this international crisis.
All right, now I want to turn our attention to our top story this morning, and that summit that's set to happen on Friday in Alaska between Trump and Putin, and the doors open for Zelensky to potentially come as well. This new polling that we have from Gallup is showing a change in sentiment, it seems, between the Ukrainian people. So let's go ahead and take a look at that Gallup poll if we can. It was conducted in early July, and 69% of people say they favor a negotiated end to the war as soon as possible, compared to 24% who support continuing to fight until victory. And this marks, look, it looks like a bit of a reversal from public opinion in 2022. If you look at those numbers, they're almost flip-flopped. Scottie, I'll get you to weigh in on this one. Trump has said there might need to be some land swaps. What do you think is going to happen in this meeting?
And I am cautiously optimistic, but I've said all along that I think that the only way that we achieve peace in the region is by bringing people face to face. And obviously Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump at the table, and even Zelensky can sit there as well. I think that is the best way we achieve this peace. Zelensky keeps saying we have our own security concerns, we have our own security guarantees. That is what the issue was in the very beginning that started this war. I think from Vladimir Putin's perspective is he wanted the security concerns that he could not have missiles on his border that could actually hit Moscow. So I think if the Ukrainian people are okay in relinquishing territory that just came to them back in 2014, only 9 years ago, that have been long-term Russian territories anyways, the Donbass and Crimea region, and with the promise that NATO will not join, Ukraine will not be able to join NATO, I think that we have peace right here on the horizon, which is good for not only that region, but the rest of the world that has been kind of held captive by this conflict since it began back in 2014 or even 2022.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. It's not just 3 years. It really kind of goes back to 2014 with Crimea, doesn't it? Khyvan, you want to weigh in here on this one?
Sure. I think the last example we talked about, Donald Trump said that the war in Israel would end before he took office. He said he would resolve this war in Ukraine day one. And it seems like his approach, Teddy Roosevelt said, speak softly and carry a big stick. Donald Trump talks a big game and never backs it up. So I don't think Putin respects him. I don't think he's going to really move the needle here at all. I think the same is true with Israel. And we've seen it time and time again that the international community doesn't listen to Donald Trump. And of course, he thinks he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for it. It's ridiculous to watch.
All right, well, back here in the United States, Trump is going to be addressing violent crime in Washington, D.C. on Monday. Yet overall violent crime in the city is down year to date as we're looking at the numbers here, if we want to pull that up. Khyvan, I'd like to get your thoughts on this one. The administration has said it's not ruled out directly federalizing the local police, and critics are saying this is an authoritarian move. He says it's just something we need to do in our nation's capital to clean up the streets and make Americans proud of our nation's capital. What do you think?
Yeah, two things. I think this is really an attack on the homeless community in DC because they don't have policies in place to solve the issue long term. So it's going to maybe clean up the city aesthetically for a month and solve no long term problems. But I do agree that this has authoritarian elements to it, very much in the vein of Donald Trump's military parade or sending the National Guard to LA. He's overcompensating because he looks weak on so many issues. His base is fractured on immigration, on him adding $4 trillion to the debt, on him increasing, our engagements in international conflicts.
Scotty, I'll let you weigh in here. I know you're chomping at the bit as well. Go ahead, Scotty.
I'm sorry to disregard the talking points that's being given by my friend on the other side.
Don't disregard, listen.
But you said it yourself. You got to blame it on the local policies of Mayor Bowser, who following COVID, never reopened the homeless shelters for those that were mentally handicapped. That's why the reason is Donald Trump's having to step into anyone who has walked the streets recently in Washington, D.C. They can tell that there's definitely a homeless issue, not only just a regular home, but those that have some mental issues that definitely need to be addressed. And yet the own mayor of D.C. has turned her eye and will not look at them and deal with them. So yes, Donald Trump's having to step in, and you're right. D.C. is a reflection of the rest of the country. So it is quite embarrassing when you bring foreign leaders into our country and they go into our capital, and it absolutely looks like a war zone in some areas and very scary just to walk down the street.
I go to
D.C. with the
all the
recent
time.
attacks that have happened on those in politics themselves. If our politicians can't feel safe at their work area, how can the rest of America?
And we are going to talk about the safety of politicians actually right now. So let's get to that. And it relates to the battle over the congressional redistricting in Texas. It's getting really nasty on both sides. And an interesting moment when I asked a Texas Democratic State Representative, Ann Johnson, who has actually fled the state in an effort to block a vote there. But I asked her about people thinking Democrats want language, swirling in headlines where Republicans or the AG there in Texas is hunting them down to try to create a spectacle, and asking whether this is a political stunt or is she truly protecting democracy. And here's what she said.
Oh, no, I don't want that. And I'm feeling this personally. I am your former chief human trafficking prosecutor in Houston, Texas. I have had criminals threaten my life. I have lived with that. I never thought it would be coming from the attorney general or the governor. And to my colleagues who are sitting silent on this, it's gone too far.
Look, and we know attacks on political figures in this country have been on the rise. We've got some data we can show you on that as well. June 14th, we just had those Minnesota lawmakers who were gunned down in their home, one executed along with their spouse and their dog. In 2025, we had the Israeli embassy workers killed in May of this year. In April, we had the arson at the Pennsylvania governor's home, at Shapiro's home. I mean, the list goes on here. I don't need to go down all of them. And we all know that President Trump had 2 attempts on his life as well. So, Scotty, what can we do? How can both sides tone down the rhetoric?
Anna, thank you so much for covering this, you and your staff, because this is how we start. We actually continue to highlight these attacks, and they're meant to not only hurt the people at that moment, but more importantly, install fear in good people for running for office and for standing up for what they were elected to do. And I think it's only because if these need to be headlining every night until we can make sure that our politicians on both sides of the aisle, and I hope my colleague is going to agree with me, that this is happening, this rhetoric is coming from both sides, not just one, and in various areas, and we need to continue to have this as is a major conversation because we're not going to turn into a third world country where where politicians are targeted and we see fear and what we see in a lot of other countries around the world that the United States has stepped in to try to stop happening here in our own streets.
Yeah, and Kaivan, I mean, it's disgusting that we even have to say that violence has no place in a democracy, but how do we get back to a place where both sides respect one another's political viewpoints?
Well, it's a couple things, but I think we also have to be clear, right? A Republican is the one behind the assassination attempt on Trump. A Republican
No, it's
murdered
not.
Melissa Hortman and her husband and shot their dog due to the violent rhetoric happening on the right and in combination with a very toxic online right extremism that's happening and hasn't been curtailed, and then unfettered access to guns, which is only an American problem. So I agree it's a bipartisan issue. I agree that people should be safe to run for office. But you know what? That also comes with then Republicans need to have the gall to stand up to Trump at times, right? When he's targeting a local politician like Zoran Mamdani from the White House, directing all sorts of racism and threats against him, right? You don't hear anyone speak up against that. And that's exactly the type of rhetoric that leads to these horrible outcomes.
We're seeing it on both sides, and the president's had 2 attempts on his life.
That's your opinion.
It's disgusting. Okay, you're right. It's not my opinion. It's
No,
facts.
it's
We're
fact.
seeing it on both sides.
A
That's the
Republican
data.
was behind the
That's
attempt
data.
on Trump.
Kaivan, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Scotty, appreciate it. Thank you.